Caitlin Clark could be breaking another record, this time with an endorsement deal. The Associated Press says Clark will soon be signing an 8-year, $28 million contract with Nike.
Caitlin Clark just shook the sports world to its core with a jaw-dropping $25 million Nike contract that left everyone stunned, especially Sophie Cunningham, who was caught frozen in disbelief. This isn't just another sneaker deal. This is a cultural earthquake. Was Nike betting everything on her record-breaking rookie season? Or was this a bold marketing gamble to crown Clark as their next global icon? Either way, Sophie's reaction, a messy mix of shock, awe, and straight-up envy, bounced across locker rooms and timelines like wildfire. Players couldn't stop whispering, fans couldn't stop tweeting, and suddenly, the entire basketball world was forced to ask, what's the real story behind this history-making signing? Caitlin Clark didn't just grab a contract, she unleashed a shockwave that rattled the league. In her very first WNBA season, she locked in a record-shattering $25 million with Nike, a number so huge it dwarfed every deal in league history and even topped the contracts of some seasoned NBA vets. That's not just impressive, that's unheard of. For most athletes, a payday like this would be the ultimate headline, the crowning moment of a career. But Caitlin? She wasn't chasing dollar signs or a quick spotlight. She was aiming for something bigger, rewriting the narrative of women's sports itself. That's why the money, and even the promise of her own Nike signature shoe, the very first in WNBA history, wasn't the true headline. The real drama came from what she did next. Instead of basking in her glory, Caitlin flipped the script in the boldest way possible. Just days after the contract news exploded, she invited Sophie Cunningham to what everyone thought was a chill Nike event in Indianapolis. Sophie assumed it was just a brand mixer, maybe some photos, maybe a casual media spot. She walked in calm, with no clue that she was about to step into one of the most jaw-dropping ambushes the WNBA had ever witnessed. As the room went dark and the crowd hushed, the lights cut out. A massive screen lit up the space, rolling a cinematic short film that traced Caitlin's rise, from a small-town baller to the new face of Nike. The silence was electric. Every eye locked on Sophie as she realized she was witnessing history in real time. From packed high school gyms in Iowa where the crowd held its breath every time Caitlin Clark touched the ball, to the bright, pressure-filled arenas of the WNBA, the film told her story raw and unfiltered. It didn't just spotlight her rise. It exposed the struggles that tried to crush her, the critics tearing at her game, the mental battles behind closed doors, and the doubts that at times screamed louder than the cheers. But just as heavy as the lows were, the highs hit harder. The montage rolled through buzzer beaters that sent crowds into chaos, record-breaking audiences tuning in just to watch her magic, and a loyal inner circle that never abandoned her, even when the outside noise was deafening. By the time the screen faded to black, the energy in the room was electric. People were buzzing like they had just witnessed a championship moment. Then came the twist no one expected. Nike reps stepped out, holding a jersey stitched in gold, an honor usually saved for the legends of the game, never a rookie. The message was crystal clear. Nike was crowning Caitlin as the future of the sport, the one meant to carry the torch. Everyone expected her to step forward, claim her prize, and let the cameras catch her glory. But Caitlin Clark flipped the script in front of the entire room. She turned to Sophie Cunningham, her voice sharp and steady, and dropped a bombshell. This isn't just for me. This is for every woman who shows up, fights hard, and protects her team. The money, the contract, even the promise of the next great Nike sneaker. Suddenly, all of that felt small compared to this jaw-dropping move. In that moment, Caitlin didn't just take a crown. She rewrote the definition of loyalty. She shifted the meaning of success, reminding everyone that the real power in sports isn't just about headlines. It's about how you use them. And the question hanging in the air was impossible to ignore. If Caitlin Clark can flip the meaning of loyalty overnight, is this the spark of a total transformation for the entire sport? The room hadn't even recovered when the atmosphere shifted again. A Nike rep stepped back in, holding a sleek black box that promised another shock was coming. The room froze, every breath caught in the air, as the Nike rep lifted the lid off the sleek black box. Inside sat a pair of custom player edition sneakers, blazing in Indiana fever colors. But the real gut punch, stitched across the heel in bold letters, were 3 words that hit like a battle cry. No backing down. Just the sight of those shoes was enough to leave Sophie Cunningham wide-eyed and speechless. For a role player who's rarely in the spotlight, these weren't just sneakers. They were validation, recognition, and a straight-up stamp of legitimacy. But Nike wasn't done, and Caitlin Clark definitely wasn't either. Beneath the sneakers, tucked like a hidden weapon, lay a folded contract. This wasn't some random gift. This was a deal Caitlin herself had carved out during negotiations for her own monster, $25 million endorsement. She had literally forced Nike's hand to make space for Sophie Cunningham to claim her own deal under the swoosh umbrella. Who does that in a league where everybody's clawing for scraps? This wasn't some soft-hearted move. This was strategy, defiance, and a complete rewriting of how the game is played. In a cutthroat business where every endorsement, every headline, and every dollar is fought over, Caitlin didn't hoard the spotlight. She redirected it. She weaponized her star power to pull Sophie out of the shadows and into history, reminding everyone that loyalty has teeth when you know how to use it. For Sophie, the moment was surreal. She walked into that room expecting to clap for Caitlin's triumph, and walked out realizing she was now part of a once-in-a-lifetime power play. The usual culture of rivalry, jealousy, and one-upmanship cracked open for a second, replaced by raw solidarity. Caitlin Clark had proved that true power isn't just breaking records or signing mega contracts. It's remembering who stood next to you when the critics were loud and the lights were blinding. And Caitlin didn't do it quietly either. She shared her spotlight deliberately, unapologetically, and with a level of defiance that made every insider in that room sit up straight. Which leaves the one haunting question echoing through the stunned crowd. Was this move heartfelt loyalty? Or a calculated power play to tighten her grip on the league? Or was this just the start of something deeper? Something no one in the league has dared to uncover yet? Stay locked in, because here's why Sophie Cunningham mattered more than anyone realized. When Caitlin Clark stepped into the WNBA, it wasn't a fairy tale red carpet entrance, it was a storm. The spotlight was scorching, cameras stalked her like vultures, and critics circled, waiting for that first stumble. Every move was magnified, every misstep pounced on like blood in the water. And the league veterans? They didn't exactly roll out the welcome mat. Angel Reese and Dijonai Carrington seemed locked on making her rookie season as rough as possible. Sometimes it was sharp words dripping with venom. Other times it was body blows that bordered on hostile. The pressure was nonstop, expectations sky high, and Caitlin was under a microscope every second. But in that chaos, one figure quietly rose up as her shield: Sophie Cunningham. She wasn't just a teammate, she became Caitlin's enforcer. When the contact got ugly, Sophie was right there, stepping between Clark and her challengers. She ate fouls that could have taken Caitlin out, making it crystal clear to the league. If the refs weren't protecting Clark, Sophie would. And Sophie didn't need to throw wild punches to make her point. Her presence was loud enough to echo from baseline to nosebleeds. She was Caitlin's silent armor, the steady force that let the rookie phenom lock in on the basket and drop the kind of performances that packed arenas and broke viewership records. And Caitlin never forgot it. So when her golden moment came, she refused to let it shine only on herself. Nike handed her a breathtaking gold-stitched jersey, the kind of piece destined for a Hall of Fame case. The crowd waited for her to slip it on, beam for the cameras, and take her solo crown. But Caitlin froze the moment. Holding the jersey tight, she turned to Sophie with words that cut through the room like fire. "This isn't just for me. This is for every woman who shows up, fights hard, and protects her team." The place erupted. But Caitlin wasn't done shocking them. From a display case, she pulled a sleek box. Inside, a custom pair of Sophie Cunningham Player Edition sneakers, blazing in Indiana fever colors. Gasps filled the room as Sophie realized this wasn't Caitlin's glory alone. It was hers too. Those sneakers alone could have been career-defining for Sophie Cunningham, a visible crown showing the league that her grind and sacrifices had finally been noticed. But then came the real shock that froze the entire room. Beneath the sneakers sat a folded contract. Not a ceremonial prop, not a PR stunt, a real Nike deal. And the kicker? Caitlin Clark had brokered it herself, using the leverage from her monster $25 million payday to force Nike into giving Sophie her own spot under the swoosh banner. This wasn't a casual shout-out or some token cosign. It was a calculated business move that shattered the old playbook on loyalty and leadership in pro sports. In a league where every headline, every endorsement, and every frame of screen time is fought over like gold, Caitlin made the unthinkable decision. She shared her power. And make no mistake, this wasn't marketing spin. It was personal. Clark's message was loud and defiant. Solidarity can matter more than rivalry. True leadership isn't about hogging the spotlight. It's about deciding who you pull into it with you. That's why the air in that room was so charged. Because suddenly, the question wasn't just about contracts. It was bigger. What happens when solidarity overshadows rivalry? When leadership is measured not by the shine you claim, but by who you drag into the light beside you. And then came Sophie's reaction, raw, unfiltered, and unforgettable. She didn't drop staged, rehearsed tears for the cameras. What poured from her eyes was real. Years of bruises, fouls, and overlooked sacrifice finally breaking into recognition she never thought would come. It was the type of moment that left her frozen, trying to process the impossible. She wasn't chasing acknowledgement, yet Caitlin Clark made sure the world saw her anyway. And in doing so, Caitlin cracked the league's entire definition of loyalty wide open. The whispers hit instantly. Why Sophie? Why would a rookie who had just secured one of the most groundbreaking Nike contracts in sports history redirect her first major spotlight to a teammate instead of keeping it all for herself? The answer wasn't in flashy PR lines. It was in blood, sweat, collisions, hard fouls, and those unspoken moments of defense where Sophie had been Clark's shield when the league tried to break her. From the very first weeks of Caitlin Clark's WNBA journey, Sophie Cunningham stepped into a role nobody assigned her, but everybody saw. When the league's physical play turned brutal, Sophie was the first wall of defense between Caitlin and the storm. She leaned into hits, confronted rivals head-on, and delivered silent but deadly warnings. Mess with Clark, and you'll have to go through me. And here's the wild part. Sophie never bragged about it. She didn't post her protection online, didn't beg for cheers from the stands, and never once demanded credit. She was the unspoken enforcer, the shadow moving with Caitlin every step of the way, less like a teammate and more like an unflinching guardian. But Caitlin noticed every hidden sacrifice, every foul Sophie absorbed, every confrontation she took on, every moment she allowed Clark to stay locked in on the rim instead of the chaos. And when the stage got massive at Nike's Indianapolis event, Caitlin made sure those quiet battles would no longer be invisible. In front of executives, reporters, teammates, and cameras flashing, she dropped a line that shook the room. People talk about the plays I make, but Sophie makes the plays no one sees. That alone had jaws dropping, but then came the bombshell reveal. From the display case came a pair of custom Sophie Cunningham sneakers, blazing in Indiana fever colors, and stitched with a bold mantra that hit like a punch. No backing down. Gasps ripped through the room. But the real shock wasn't in the kicks. It was what lay beneath them. A folded contract. Not symbolic, not ceremonial. A legit Nike deal with Sophie's name on it. Clark had literally weaponized her own $25 million endorsement talks to force Nike to sign Sophie into the family. Never before in WNBA history had a rookie flipped her leverage like that, dragging another player into the spotlight instead of hogging it all herself. The fallout was instant. Inside the Fever locker room, rookies saw a living blueprint of what loyalty really looks like. Veterans started rethinking what influence means in sports. And even rivals admitted in private whispers that this was the kind of recognition most players chase their whole careers, but never get. What Caitlin Clark pulled off went way beyond sneakers, contracts, or even boosting one teammate's career. She turned personal power into collective strength, flipping the script on what influence really means in pro sports. In a league where every inch of attention is fought over, Caitlin proved the loudest flex isn't about what you take. It's about what you choose to give. And here's the twist. What if Nike's boldest gamble wasn't just about selling sneakers or chasing headlines, but about cashing in on the untapped power of generosity? Could that single move shift the entire balance of influence in sports forever? Stay locked in, because this is the real story behind Nike's $25 million gamble. Sure, $25 million is a mind-blowing figure, but the true shock is what Caitlin Clark did with it. Money can buy commercials, billboards, and flashy merch drops, but it can't buy vision. And from her very first day in the league, Caitlin walked into every room with vision. She wasn't just putting points on the board, she was shifting the entire atmosphere of the WNBA. Suddenly, attendance is surging, rivalries are exploding, and arenas that once sat half empty are now thundering with sellout crowds. Caitlin has become the undeniable face of a sport that's been clawing for respect on the national stage. And that Nike deal? It only confirmed what fans were already screaming. Caitlin Clark is more than a highlight reel. She's a cultural reset wrapped in an Indiana Fever jersey. Nike didn't just see a rookie draining logo threes from impossible ranges. They saw something bigger, something money can't fabricate. In a sports world packed with cookie-cutter PR smiles and polished brand robots, Caitlin brought the one thing nobody could fake: raw authenticity. And she didn't chase this deal to polish her own crown. She chased it to build space for someone else. The breaking point came in that Nike boardroom, where Caitlin laid down an audacious line no rookie had ever dared. She wouldn't sign unless her teammate Sophie Cunningham was included. Billion-dollar brands aren't used to rookies making demands, but Caitlin didn't flinch. And that's what made Nike sit up and listen. It wasn't a burden, it was brilliance. Because here's the truth: loyalty sells, sisterhood sells, authentic connection in a world drowning in fake slogans, that's priceless. Nike understood instantly that Caitlin wasn't just bringing a contract, she was bringing a movement. From that moment, the deal transformed. It wasn't a personal payday anymore, it was the blueprint of a revolution. Nike's creative team wasted no time, shaping a campaign around Caitlin and Sophie, not a manufactured duo, but two players bonded by grit, trust, and battles under the brightest lights. Every ad, every behind-the-scenes feature, every piece of merch suddenly had one theme. This wasn't just about sneakers, it was about loyalty, power, and rewriting the culture of women's basketball. The takes came flying, some calling it absurd. But Sophie Cunningham's defense of Caitlin Clark was blunt, fearless, and unshakable. That single moment went viral, not just because of her words, but because of the raw conviction behind them. Together, Caitlin and Sophie have built something far bigger than just an on-court duo. This is loyalty, this is trust. It's the kind of bond that can flip a locker room upside down. And maybe even change the destiny of an entire franchise. So here's the real question. Could this unbreakable bond between Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham be the secret weapon that decides the Indiana Fever's fate? And maybe even the future of the WNBA itself? Because Sophie's defense of Caitlin wasn't about spitting stats, points, or flashy assists. It was about presence, reach, and undeniable impact. She reminded the world that Caitlin hasn't just filled arenas, she's transformed them. She's pushed ticket sales to all-time highs, dragged in TV audiences at numbers the WNBA has never seen, and forced sponsors to pour money into a league they used to overlook. Clark didn't just show up. She rewrote the storylines of entire seasons and shoved the WNBA into a new era. And here's the kicker. When Sophie said it, it didn't feel like a polished press statement or some PR-crafted speech. It hit like loyalty, raw and unfiltered. A teammate stepping into the storm to shield someone she believes in, no matter the fallout. What's happening in Indiana is a cycle most teams can only dream about. Caitlin lifts Sophie after her breakout moments. Sophie steps in when the noise around Clark gets too loud. And that back and forth reveals the glue that most franchises completely miss. Winning isn't just about plays on the whiteboard. It's about the trust that builds when players know their grind won't be forgotten. Talent puts points on the board, but trust wins titles. And in Indiana, that trust is being built in real time, possession by possession, clap by clap, comment by comment. And Caitlin shows that instinct every night, in the big ways and the small. After games, reporters grill her on shooting numbers or passing stats, and instead of hyping herself, she pivots to spotlight teammates. A hustle play, a key rebound, a defensive stop that never makes the highlight reel. She makes sure those moments get remembered. That's not just leadership, that's culture-shifting energy. Caitlin Clark's awareness goes way beyond the box score. It cuts straight into the heartbeat of her team. And for Sophie Cunningham, who thrives on grit, energy, and leadership over flashy stats, that recognition hits heavy. She's the spark in the huddle, the voice slicing through the chaos, the one keeping the group sharp when fatigue starts dragging them down. And Clark doesn't just notice it, she amplifies it. She makes sure fans and media see it too, shining a spotlight on the glue work that never shows up on highlight reels. And Sophie, she answers back in the most powerful ways. She's the first to step in front of Clark when an opponent crosses the line with physical play. She's the one clapping back at the lazy narratives that try to shrink Caitlin's influence or write her success off as hype. Sophie takes on part of the burden, carrying weight so Clark can keep being the relentless, unstoppable force she is on the court. And for an Indiana Fever squad still searching for its rhythm, that bond has become more than a vibe. It's a lifeline. It's the foundation this team is building on, a reminder that the journey is bigger than any one game or any one player. What's forming here isn't just the tale of a rookie phenom or a veteran teammate. It's the birth of a partnership that's rewriting what leadership looks like in women's basketball. Fans don't just crave jaw-dropping highlights. They crave authenticity, loyalty, and heart. And in Clark and Cunningham, they're getting all three blazing at once, living proof that greatness is never built alone. So what do you think? Has Caitlin Clark and Sophie Cunningham's bond quietly become the hidden force that could reshape the entire WNBA? Drop your takes down below. And don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.